The following is a transcript of a conversation between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am. From the 15th of May, 2021, topic literature. I am. The power of a poem is the manifestation of the idea through the verb. It is the taking of action to shape something, to make it real. A poem is a code that unites vibrations called words, which are made up of concepts, ideas, and intentions. These, when combined, have the same effect that, in alchemy, is produced by the melting of chemical elements. 3 syllables such as hydrogen, oxygen, hydrogen will form the word water. The combination of 4 words such as carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, rhyming with a 5th, which is phosphorus, create the poem of life. The right choice of words in a poem are the summary of existence. Me. That is why they are so complicated to understand or tedious for the common reader. They demand intellectuality to know how to read between the lines, and they are genuinely exhausting, stilted with so much magic that they become incomprehensible, unattainable. I am. Its purpose is to be interpreted by those who see beyond words, who see ideas with the heart, who feel in coherence with every part of their being. A poem is a scribble of absurdities for a logical mind. A poem is beauty for one who sees from the heart. A poem is a spell for those who lived in the religious structure. A poem is a weapon for those who fight in a revolution. A poem is magic for those who understand alchemy. A poem is knowledge for the wise. A poem is information for the intellectual. A poem is technology for the manifester. Its interpretation is infinite according to your gaze, according to your consciousness. Me. Sometimes you need more details. Go deep, word by word. I am. This takes us out of the data and places us in the experience. Me. So there is a transformation, as if we say that a poem is the algebra that allows the existence of computation, but then it's necessary to develop computers capable of processing it. I am. In addition to the thousands of applications, programs, platforms, and systems that arise from this mathematics of information. Me. That's how simple but complex numbers such as 0 and 1 in systems programming become colors, shapes, and what we see. I am. That is how the poem becomes a story, and the story, spoken or written, becomes literature. Me. Is literature the extension of the poem? I am. Many might say that, speaking of the different arts, literature and poetry are one and the same art. But we could consider that it has other characteristics beyond verses and metrics. Literature is intellectual and beautifully free in something you call prose. The word is the Latin contraction of pro versus. That is, it goes beyond verse. That is, it has a continuous movement in a straight line. Poetic verse is based on a metric, like music and colors. But in prosaic verse, the verb is humanized by means of the narrative resource. Me. To tell a story, to tell something. I am. That's right. For which no established metric is necessary, although, as you can imagine, all literary narration usually has its sacred trinity as well. Me. What is it? I am. Beginning, not, and denouement. The first storytelling took place around the fire of a bonfire, where the elders told their experiences to the young, who waited attentively to listen to the exploits of their elders in order to follow in their footsteps. Each narration was a story that allowed learning, a kind of school of life. Every story began with a description of the circumstance and of a context that propitiated the discovery of a conflict, a knot, where the lines of the narration became more complex and kept the listener expectant and attentive to the narrative thread. The interaction of the listener could be sought through questions or exclamations that nourished the story by opening lateral paths, even using the resources of flashback, retrospective scene, or flash forward scenes. This freedom that literature allows enriches the stories to nourish with greater force the outcome of the problem, the resolution. Normally, the end of a story sought to show the educational tool, what we call moral, or a sort of moral that explains the pros and cons of our actions. Me. Everyone can tell stories because they have more freedom. I am. But not everyone knows how to tell them. The only regulation of a story is to follow its sacred trinity, but at the same time to maintain a gripping tone in which every few paragraphs or sentences something happens that drives the reader or listener to want to know more. The surprise effect makes the viewer experience the emotions in his or her body as if it were his or her own experience. Me. That's why you said before that literature moves us from data to experience, because while the poem focuses intellectual attention on concept, literature makes us live every detail. I am. It's not the same to say, warm in colours, plenty in lovers, than to say, the garden was an emerging spring state, where both trees and shrubs were glowing with new buds, while those fleshy plants were shyly letting the blossoms of their flowers peep out in the soft rustle of a breeze. The cherry trees were blushing with warm pinkish tones, which attracted hundreds of anthropods in love with their colours. Bees, butterflies, spiders, ladybugs, and ants who caressed their buds with the affection of a seductive lover, pollinating the garden, dressing it in spring. Me. The detail makes the difference. I am. The magic of poetry means that the initial phrase can be interpreted in many ways. I can be talking about a cherry tree, a woman, a machine, a car, the earth, or a dress. The simplicity of a code frames an endless number of possibilities according to the internal world of its reader or listener. However, literary prose has the luxury of describing exactly what it wants to convey, with the aim of bringing the viewer to live the experience of the speaker or writer as his own. Me. But it's not like any writing, because it's not easier either. I am. Literature is the product or act of that which is inscribed, marked, engraved in stone or paper, from the Greek diptera. Its greatest quality and distinction from other kinds of texts or discourses is its aesthetic and intellectual value. The words must be descriptive, helping the reader not only feel part of the narrative, but to feel the emotions produced by being part of it. Literature succeeds in transporting the recipient of a story to a fictitious world in which he or she inevitably finds him or herself becoming the narrator or the protagonist of the story. He relates to the environment, to the conflicts, and makes a parallel with his own life, in which he can understand himself as a necessary participant. Because the protagonists are faceless, you can put yourself in the role you want, me, and live the story. And even, I imagine, bring it to real life, to action. I am. And this is what I wanted to get to. Bringing literature into action. That's what you know as acting. The stories that mobilize people precisely must be put into movement, and individuals, pretending to see their ideas in action, take them to the manifestation of the senses, transcending the oral and written aspect towards the physical and emotional interpretation of the text. Me. The theatre. I am. As I once told you, theatre means place of vision, where one goes to observe, from the Greek theia, meaning vision, and tron, meaning place and space. The theatre not only arose as a staging of literature by those who needed to experience what was written or narrated, but it was also born as a response to popular illiteracy, where, because they could not read, they should not be exempt from knowledge. Thus the theatre was the place where people freely approached to see and listen to what was written, and they did not know how to read. Me. Oh, so the theatre is a necessary part of literature. I am. We all have stories to tell. We all have a beginning, a knot and a denouement in our lives. because life is a story of constant beginnings, knots, and denouements. And we all act, we all take action to these experiences and their intentions of outcome. We all put on masks to act in specific circumstances and contexts. We are all observed by someone who admires us. We all interact in conflicts that we must resolve. And we all initiate paths that inspire a second part in our story. Me. That is, our personalities are the attributes and defects of the protagonists that we are, who is living a narrative which seems mundane from unconsciousness, but which can become literature from consciousness. I am. Because our own experiences can be useful to others who seek inspiration from the stories of those who have lived them, you have seen how difficult it is to know the life of your ancestors because you don't have their stories. When you need to know the narrative of your life, many pages are blank, considering that what one lives is not important. When perhaps for those who will come later, my stories, knots and denouements, will be the keys to the beginning of their stories. Me. What do you recommend then? I am. That little by little and without fear, you write your story, your beginnings, your conflicts, and your resolutions, that you narrate your exploits, no matter how small they may be. Everyone has something to tell, and there is always someone looking to hear that story. Me. Plant a tree, write a book, have a child. I am. The 3 things everyone should do before they die. A tree will leave in your place all the oxygen you have consumed in your time, as payment to life, giving back to it what you have taken from it in order to live. Having a child could in turn fulfill and culminate a life project. And of course, write a book, even if it takes you years to do it, even if it has only 30 pages or thousands of them. Write your story. Write the story that is born from yours. Leave a mark, because literature is the way we mark the steps that inspire others. Me. Writing a book was what I always considered my great inheritance, which is why I called everything I started to write telling my life that way. I am, and so you will continue. Surrender yourself to eternity through the lines that describe your path through time and space. Me. I am the writer of my own story, actor of my own play. I am. Writing is the painting of the voice. Voltaire.